All right. Hey, no problem. So welcome to probably one of the most interesting topics have as far as the whole conference. And that's diversity. Because everybody is diverse. When you really look at it, you know, scouting is just saying we want to bring it to your attention that there are people with different abilities. There are people who are wired differently. There are individuals that think differently. And bottom line is Boy Scouts of America is designed so that we recognize that diversity and we are willing to take and incorporate that diversity into our program so that any young person who comes to be part of our program should be felt to be welcomed, to be a participant, to be actively involved. So as we look at the role of diversity, it's been around for years. I mean, I taught school in the special ed department as a vocation. So I have worked with diversity my whole life. I've had to face the difficult issues of regular classroom teachers who are saying, not in my class. And I was saying, yes, in your class. And I've had to work with parents who didn't want to take and have their child identified as having a disability. And I've had the other spectrum where in order to collect Social Security, there are some of them who wanted their kids identified as having disabilities when they really didn't, so that mom could collect Social Security and stay home. So when you look at diversity, we've had diversity for a long time. Probably ever since 94-142, which was the law that allowed diversity to be put into public education. And because of that, there's also some issues with that. Because now, you know, public says, oh, special, that means I can't do it because they're special. And they require special training, so I can't be a scoutmaster for someone who, is there. So as we look at diversity, I mean, I love the topic. I love the fact that there are things that can happen with it. And as commissioners, every commissioner needs to be able to understand it's not rocket science. It's really relatively easy to be able to work with individuals who have diverse backgrounds. We just need to understand how we can apply it, the best way we can apply it. Okay, so let's look at it. Our learning objectives for this particular course is we want to be able to identify diversity. We want to explore the cornerstones of diversity. And we want to explain what diversity brings to scouting. Out in the midway, there is one display that I've got there that's got a bunch of red folders. Well, that came from a handbook of working with scouts with special needs that is out of print. Okay, but basically it has got every special need category and how a young man could benefit from having that disability. Hey, look at that. I am really
diverse. You are really good.
Boy, I am. And that's a good thing. Because sometimes those little things and quirks that happen, you know, we look at them as quirks and as things that are a little bit different. But let me share with you let's get this one first. A brochure that was a mistake taken a look at that brochure. Now look at that brochure and tell me how that brochure applies to diversity.
When you open it up, it's upside down.
What would you upside down?
Looks upside down, right side up to me.
Depends on how you turn it.
Oh,
Depends on how you look at it.
that's right. It depends on how you turn it. And what did you just do? When you turned it, you were reading it like this, and then you turned it. What did you just do? You provided an accommodation so that you could read the material. And so in scouting, when we talk about having an accommodation, please don't take and think it's something that's big and serious and all this other stuff that's going to require a whole bunch of major effort, especially as you go back and work with your units. You know, you'll get a telephone call and you'll know if it's somebody that has a disability, because the conversation is going to start something like this. Hello, this is Scoutmaster so-and-so. I have a scout who. Now, if they start with that sentence, you can almost 90% of the time know that you've got somebody who has is a diverse scout and has a different way of having to approach it. And it may be as simple as turning the page. And that as far as looking at an accommodation. By the way, I have plenty of these brochures printed. Any of you who are commissioners and you have units that you're responsible for or a unit, please take the brochures and make sure that they have them, because we're here to help with the diversity issues. All right, let's take and let's look at what diversity is. Get my mouse back up here. Okay, so what is diversity? Any idea?
It's a mixture of people.
A mixture of people, a mixture of ideas, a mixture of philosophies, a mixture of all kinds of issues. Politically, there are a bunch of issues that relate to diversity that has received press as of the last little while, which, you know, makes it a little bit more challenging and a little bit more interesting, because the diversity that we are looking at, there are some of them who are attempting to insist that we follow diversity and we have their way of thinking, and there is no other way in order for us to be able to handle it. But bottom line, diversity, it affects all kinds of issues. And they often aren't right straightforward. Sometimes they are there. But as we look at it, we need to take and be able to embrace diversity, because the scouting program has the greatest set of values that there ever was for any individual who comes from any diversity. So what does that really mean to us as scouters?
Should be open-minded about everything.
Okay, we should be open-minded about everything. Perfect. Any other ideas?
You have to be accepting.
Accepting of different ideas. Okay, and so we're going to be exploring some of those things there. Okay, bottom line, the definition of diversity. It's the way we are different, the conditions of having unique characteristics. A person who has a Spanish or a Hispanic ethnicity and background, they are different. They have a different language. If someone comes from Europe, they have a different language. If someone comes from the Middle East, Trying to read their language is a major challenge. Trying to read their names is a major challenge. So when we look at their unique set of characteristics, that's them as an individual. The same as you are an individual. I don't have the same characteristics as you do. But we all can work together. Inclusion is the act or the state of including, of being included within a group or a structure. Okay? And scouting is the bottle of glue that holds us all together. Okay? So as we look at this one, there's one of the experts in diversity. And the way she ended up putting it was inclusion or diversity means that you're invited to the dance. Inclusion means you're invited to dance at the dance. That's the difference between the two particular areas. Now, at this point, we're going to have a little bit of fun. But first, I need to go over some ground rules. Okay? First ground rule is you're to critique ideas, not people. The next one is you're to speak only for yourself. In other words, if we don't want you speaking for your wife or husband or your neighbor or whoever, there are no personal attacks. As we go through, we need to listen and make sure everyone is feeling everyone's feelings are heard and validated. You can tell last night when I was typing this, I didn't quite get the poor school teacher. Only one person speaks at a time. Use I statements. You can agree to disagree and disagree without being disagreeable. Okay, you need to be positive and non-judgmental and open to new ideas and be respectful, and you may pass. Now that's rather interesting until you take and consider that we're going to play ball.
Oh, hey.
Okay, now the way we're going to play ball is that particular ball has questions that are written on the ball. All of you know which is your right hand. Okay, so as we take and we play ball, where your thumb of your right hand happens to fall, there is a question that I want you to answer using these ground rules. And let's just explore diversity just a little bit. Okay, so catch the ball.
Good pass.
Okay, read your question out loud. Let's see how you'd answer that.
How do you respond to jokes that are demeaning or derogatory?
Oh, good question. How do you?
Yeah, Stuart, you gotta quit telling those jokes.
I raise my hand and say, you're not supposed to tell that kind of joke when it's going to hurt people's feelings.
All right, very good. All right, throw the ball. Somebody else is gonna catch it.
All right, now see, which is my right hand? I'm dyslexic. It's hard for me to figure that out.
Okay, that's a diversity situation. So you choose which one is your right and your left hand. We don't care. I mean, there's questions in the right.
Sometimes I use it for an excuse. Sometimes it's real, but there is something there. Okay, so why do people tend to seek friends that are similar to them?
Oh,
Because it's easy.
Easier in a way.
easier.
Yeah.
You usually gravitate to people that you like or have similar abilities of yours. How's that impacted by diversity?
Well, I have friends that are somewhat diverse too. I think that if you only sought out friends that were just like you, you'd stay just like you.
Okay,
You wouldn't grow, you wouldn't learn, and you wouldn't have an opportunity to have another friend.
perfect.
Well, and I think too, that with that, you're excluding someone outside of, that might be around you.
And maybe, you know,
May have something that would help me out.
Yeah.
That's what I find is that, hey, if I exclude somebody, they might have had something help.
Okay, yes.
It's difficult to get to know somebody who's different from you. Because if you look at it from their side, you're different. And so they have the same problem as you do.
Okay.
I know that wasn't an I statement, but I tried.
Yes.
Well, I was thinking the more people you expose yourself, the more ideas you hear. If you're only with people who already believe the same things as you, that's all you're going to know. And so to hear other perspectives and other sides, you have to be around people that believe other things.
Perfect. Yes.
Sometimes when you put yourself in the situation of being with others that are different, you learn things about yourself that you didn't know.
So true. So true. I mean, yes.
By that same token, you will never understand your own culture until you've lived another culture for an extended period of time.
Yes. I mean, that's a really good point. Okay, let's throw the ball again. Let's see another question.
Sure like it.
Okay.
All right. How do people learn bias and stereotypes?
How do they learn bias and stereotypes? What is bias?
Only one
automatically offended by them. You don't even know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's something that it's just ingrained into us somehow. And stereotypes, we usually see that as, like, certain groups, people think they're being picked on by giving more parking tickets to them than someone else because they happen to have a certain color scheme. That's a stereotype. Okay, so the question again, with bias and stereotypes,
How do we learn? How do we learn bias and stereotypes?
how do we learn it?
Usually you see someone else practicing it. And
Lot
you
of-
want to be friends with them, so you practice what they do.
Sometimes it's genetic. They're taught as they grow up.
Yeah, but sometimes you were taught from the time you were in the cradle about certain situations. There, and sometimes bias is subconscious. You don't even realize that you're, practicing bias or that you're involved in a bias situation. There. Okay. Yes.
I think there's actually an evolutionary component to that too. As we see in animals, if an animal happens to be a bit different, they'll actually be picked on and they may even be killed by the other animals. And I think we have that same thing born into us. It's something we have to learn not to do.
Okay. I mean, a chicken that starts to bleed in the chicken coop will die because the other chickens will pick on it until it bleeds to death. That's all those who raise chickens, that's going back too many years ago. There, of course, happened. All right, throw the ball again.
I thought that's where it was going.
Oh, there's 30 questions and there's only, what, 7 or 8 of us?
Yeah.
So, Plenty of questions.
This is one question we've already talked about. Why do people?
Then choose another one close to your next finger.
I'll use my little finger instead of my thumb. How might you personally combat prejudice and discrimination? Okay, the immediate answer to that is stand up and speak up. And when people practice that, let them know that it's not right. Be tactful about it, but you need to speak up.
Be an upstander.
Yeah.
Those of you who have taken youth protection training, you only get to do it once every 2 years. I mean, I go through youth protection training with all of the scouts registered beyond age of eligibility. Some of them once a month parts of youth protection training. Be an upstander rather than a bystander. All right, throw the ball again.
Oh, I'm not a very good thrower.
What would be the hardest about having an unseen difference or disability? Other people might not know you have any problems. And so they will judge you because of what you're not doing. We have a grandson. To look at him, big, bulky. He's in his early 20s. You would think no issue. He can't talk. He has severe autism. He's learned how to get around that, but he cannot talk. He can grunt. But just to look at him, you'd never know that.
Oh, perfect answer there, because there are unseen disabilities. And as you work with people that have the unseen disabilities, it becomes an issue that you judge them by their response. But sometimes they're roll the ball again. Yes, Annalise.
I was gonna say, sometimes it's really hard, like being on both sides, because some people have a disability and they tell you right away and they want you to know, and other people try and hide it and don't want you to know, and they just want to be treated like normal, but you treat them like normal and they can't quite, so it's kind of this balancing act between they have to let you know, but you still have to treat them like a normal, regular person. And,
Yes, and to be able to tactfully give that information so that it benefits and it doesn't add to the discrimination. And that, because when you work with people with diversity, they come into the group and sometimes they want you to know and sometimes they don't. And some parents are open and some parents aren't. So it becomes a real challenge to be able to communicate so the parent knows why you need to do it. Because as a leader in Scouts, who is the real leader in a troop? The SPL and the patrol leaders. Now you compound a little bit of the issue because you want them to make sure the Scout is successful. But you don't want to feed so much information that it adds to discrimination. Go ahead, Larry.
Okay. It says, tell of an instance when someone went out of their way to make you feel included. We have actually a young lady that's within the troop. She definitely goes out of her way with every one of she's actually in the girls' troop, but she does this not only to the girls, but to the boys, and makes them feel welcomed within the unit itself. And she goes out of her way. If she sees that they're not being included, she'll actually go get them included. And so she's really a neat young lady.
Perfect.
Annalise, you awake?
When I saw that beer ball back there. I thought, oh, this game's gonna really go over good in this class.
While Annalise is reading the question, I wanted to ask a question of the group. What is normal?
Sitting on the driveway.
Okay,
All of a sudden, just.
Depends on how you feel.
yeah,
Is there anybody here who's normal?
well, you know, I don't know, there is certain norms. When you look at the bell curve and how behavior is organized, there is that center 85%, you know, that most people fall in. That's considered normal. But when you start out on the fringes, even within that 85%, there are situations. Yes, Annalise.
Okay, says, talk about a time when you felt like an outsider and how you dealt with it. First thing that comes to mind for me is just when you go to a foreign country and they're all speaking another language and you don't know it very well, and even the little kids can speak it, and your brain kind of automatically goes, wait, but that's a 3-year-old. How can they speak better than, you know? And you're like, I know, because they've been speaking it for 3 years and I've only been for a month or so, you know? And so sometimes you just kind of have to tell yourself, it's okay, I'm getting there, I'm doing my best. I mean, you know, I'm trying, whatever, just kind of do your best to fit in and do what you can and not like go, I don't know that language, I'm not learning that. I mean, you know, you got to try, fit in.
Okay, perfect. Toss the ball again.
Dad, come into the back.
One thing you can do as an outsider, there are universal languages, and they're not spoken. Body language and music are universal languages that, if you understand, can get you from the outside to the inside
Okay,
of a group.
okay, very good. Explain.
I don't know if this has been talked about, but it says, what gives you hope that people are becoming more accepting of diversity? Well, I think I'm hopeful that people that have that different ability or different can accept who I am and trying to accept them and their ability. We have different personalities, I mean, we're all different. And so when we try to work together, make that mesh, I think we're having hope together to accepting the diversity that's coming upon us, having something new introduced to what the normal has not been. You have to slowly accept and train yourself to accept those things that are out of the norm, that hopefully people accept and will forgive if you do make a mistake.
Perfect.
In saying the right words or treating them the right way or feeding them their food or whatever it may be. Hopefully they forgive you, because sometimes we as humans forget that some are gluten-free or diabetic, dairy tolerant, you know, all this that we have to do to make sure it's done right. There's so many things out there that are so different that we hope that we have that. So.
Very good. Throw the ball again. Where your right thumb hits.
Well, I'll go with one we just didn't answer.
Okay.
How do people learn bias and stereotypes? A lot of part, I mean, I've been in the retired military, served on the East Coast, and I've dealt with people from the South, and a lot of it's cultural bias. They don't realize it's being passed down. Or because of the way that, again, it's a speech, that we actually understand it, their language. So it's like, well, they don't quite speak the way I do, or they're saying words I don't understand. We develop a bias as kids, and it's generational, and the hardest part is actually trying to break it.
Perfect. One of the other questions that's on the ball, thank you, throw her up here. But one of the other questions that's on the ball is, when did you first learn about ethnicity and bias? Or ethnicity and discrimination? You know, and I thought about that one in my own personal life, and I remember the exact moment I learned that. And that Selma had been a rather interesting name that got introduced to our culture because of some racial activities that were taking place. And I remember standing in the kitchen sink, turning to my mother and said, "They're not talking about Jesse James, are they?" Now, Jesse James was a person of color. And he had come to our farm every year, he and his family, along with Hispanic families, and we had neighbors that were Japanese and all that stuff. But he came every year and we worked right alongside of him. I didn't see any difference in the color of his skin versus, anyone else. And I remember standing there saying, "They're not talking about Jesse, are they?" And my mother, she said, "Yes." And that was the first time that Selma hurt me, because I loved Jesse. I mean, he was just one of us workers on the farm, and I was just a kid, But I also learned bias a little bit later, going to college. And as we had at the rest home, in order for the rest home to accept federal dollars to take care of the people who were residents in the rest home, they had to have a certain percentage of the staff be the minority. And so they went out and hired a minority. Okay, well, working at the rest home, going to college full time, all of a sudden my workload started going up and up and up, and there were more patients in the rest home that had to be taken care of. And we couldn't figure out, we got talking as staff, what had happened. Well, come to find out, they had hired a person of diversity, and they had brought them in, and they were in a patient's room from 3 o'clock to 11:30 watching television, because they knew they had to be hired and put on the staff, that they weren't working. So when you look at experiences, how grateful I am that the scouting program has particular cornerstones. We have leadership that's there to help us, leadership to encourage us to be involved with diversity. We have engagement. Get caught up here with my notes. There, because basically engagement is inclusion. There, if you notice out in the displays, we have the inclusion toolbox. But when you look at that particular tool, it's a tool that Special Needs is the ones who developed it. And about half of the tools in that toolbox pertains to a regular scoutmaster, because every scoutmaster deals with anxiety and depression, and they deal with food issues, and they deal with high impact guns, and they also deal with low impact bow and arrow and tomahawks. And so those are some of the tools included, so that we have diversity available in the toolbox. We also have timeless values. And I like this particular graphic because as you bring the different colors together, they still form the knot in the center. BSA, as far as I'm concerned, has the gold standard to help us with diversity. And that gold standard is part of the Scout oath and the law to help other people at all times. This is after doing your duty. Okay, to keep yourself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. But in the Scout oath and law, as far as diversity goes, which ones of the Scout law would not solve any diversity problem that arises? Because if we are trustworthy, that means we're following the values of our organization. If we're, that means we're following basically what our sponsoring organization asks us to do. But then in dealing with someone who is different, are we helpful? Are we friendly? Are we courteous? Are we kind? Are we obedient? Are we cheerful? You know, sometimes we have to be brave. You know, that when we deal with situations with diversity. So in every Scout unit, from Cubs all the way through Sea Scouts and venturing, and that if we will just follow our gold standard, you know, when it comes to diversity, we will solve in a very practical way many of the issues that diversity provides for us there. As far as looking at spelling and values, I mean, there are badges that talk about animals and nature and outdoors, and they're all part of our program. When it comes to individuals, there are all kinds and types. There are some that have disabilities that are visible and some without that aren't visible. There are some that need extra time. There's some who need extra help. The hardest one for us to look at are those who have diversity of the mind and their thinking as to how they respond, and you can't read their mind. You can't read their background as far as the values that they have. So as Scouts, we need to take and build on the program. Now, what do parents really want from Scouting? If a parent wants an individual to join Scouting, why?
What the experience they can get, and how they can help develop inside the home.
Hey,
I think that would be different for every parent.
every parent brings a little bit of diversity to it. But bottom line, why do they want them to join the Scouting program?
To fix their autism.
In
I
some-
would, at least 10% of the kids in our troop are autistic.
Okay, I mean, and dealing with autistic, one of the characteristics is the socialization. They really are not quite up to speed with a lot of our socialization. So the best thing that can happen to them is involve them in a peer-led organization to help them understand how to be closer to the normal. Yes, Annalise.
I think every parent feels like it's going to benefit their child in some way.
Right.
Some it's just to get them out of the house. Some it's so they have fun with friends. Some it's so they learn a new skill. Some it's so they advance and get that certain award. I mean, there's, like you said, different reasons, but all of them see some benefit to their child.
That's right. Some of them just want a safe place for the child to be. Some of them want their children to be successful. Some of them want their family values to be reinforced. Some of them want a place where the child can gain self-esteem and confidence. What's interesting is all of the reasons that any parent wants their scout to join Scouting is also one of the major recruitment tools that we have in Scouting. Because if they want them to be in the Scouting program, then they basically are saying, we want to join, and because of our reasons, we want our son or daughter to be around those that are there. Well, okay, if that's the case, what do youth want from scouting?
Fun.
Fun, number one reason, okay? What else?
Fun, friends, and learning.
Friends, peers, learning,
Be the example.
examples,
Successful, advancement.
successful advancement, learning new things. That's really what advancement is for. Okay,
Recognition.
recognition,
I
very
think,
good.
I think one benefit for a lot of youth is that they get a chance to familiarize themselves and be around and learn from other adults and their parents.
Right. Okay, so they want to be mentored by a role model. Okay, what's interesting is most of the youth that get into trouble, what's their number one reason why they get in trouble?
No friends.
No friends,
They're bored.
they're bored.
Uh, they have no real need to do anything. They just find ways to do things by themselves.
Right, they learn how to do things by themselves. There are some books that are out that talk about the lost child, and they talk about the culture of killing our boys. And they don't, it really isn't killing them, but it's killing the incentive, you know, in particularly boys. There, and so the boys themselves want discipline and they want structure. And if they come from a home that doesn't have those two things, why do they come to scouting? Because of discipline, because of structure. Many of our handicapped young men involved in scouting, they like to come because there is some uniformity in every troop meeting. In other words, you start with the pledge, you do the oath, and then you do the law, and then you do the training, and then you do the activity, and then you have the Scoutmaster Minute, and then you go home. And they like that consistency in our patrols. So, I mean, that's really there, and the bottom line is they want to come back. Now, the difference between the youth brings to scouting. You telling me I've got 8 minutes?
I ain't telling you anything.
That means we need to hurry up. Just some cautions. Here again, from personal experience. I was a scoutmaster in an autistic troop from youth all over the nation. I had scouts from Vermont and from Connecticut and from Texas and from Washington and from Idaho and from Utah. Montana. Now, I'll never forget the kid from Texas. He started off by not wanting to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I wasn't smart enough to realize what he was doing. The next thing he hit me with was black power. The next thing he hit me with was white privilege. And I'm sitting here saying, where did that come from? Okay, so there are some things to be cautious of. Differences that youth can bring to scouting is an ethnic backgrounds. They can bring medical and physical issues. They can bring age and generational issues. They can bring behavioral challenges. They can bring socioeconomic challenges, as well as personal needs. There, because every school or every scout has some dietary, school, and family issues that we sometimes don't understand. And these differences are simply the youth's way of life and their learning opportunities. And as leaders, we need to recognize the differences, respond appropriately, and then help with them as they can. Well, scouting is really a great big melting pot. Why?
We each bring something different.
Okay, everyone brings something different, even in a regular troop. And then when you combine a special needs troop, then you really do get everybody who brings something different, because then you start individualized planning for almost every scout in your troop there. But they bring traits from their family life. They bring all types of come from all types of family units, all types of faith, all types of racial and ethnic groups. BSA policy basically respects the rights of people and groups and aims to allow any youth to live and learn as children and enjoy scouting without immersing them in the politics of the day. Scouts are exposed to diversity in scouting that they may not otherwise experience. And at the same time, modern communication permits new ideas and norms to travel very fast. With these challenges, they become opportunities. Okay, so these opportunities provide us different perspectives, which ultimately enrich our program, strengthen our patrols, our teams, and enlighten our scouters, parents, and most of our kids. The relationships may take time to foster and may require extra work on everybody's part, but the payoff will be rich. So basically, a successful program is to achieve success. We have to include and never exclude. Okay? Every youth and leader is important and is a link in the chain of our legacy to deliver the promise. Okay, so as we look at it, we love diversity. We love to take and see the diverse program that is there. But basically, it also becomes our challenge as commissioners in that. Any questions or any comments? All right.
Scouting has always been diverse.
It always has.
This is nothing new, and it's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit interesting that they made it new.
Well, it really hasn't been new, because working with the special needs side of the house now for going on 15 years or so,
It's always been.
we have always had a diversity and have always had. This is a copy of the 30 questions that's on the ball in case you want to take or have an opportunity at some point to teach the course. And you want to buy a nice little inflatable ball and stick them on it, while you're more than welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you joining with us today.
Thank you.